One team spent nearly 4 years ranked the best in the entire world. Not decent, not good. Officially, number one on the planet, ahead of Brazil, ahead of France, ahead of every football nation that has ever existed. And they walked away with 0 trophies. Not a World Cup, not a single continental championship, nothing. This is the story of Belgium's golden generation, a team stacked with some of the best individual players of their era that somehow became one of the biggest what-ifs in modern football. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why so much talent produced so little silverware. Quick basics if football is new to you. FIFA, the organization that runs world football, ranks every national team based on results, kind of like a global power ranking updated throughout the year. Being ranked number one means, on paper, you are the best team on earth. Belgium hit that spot for the first time in November 2015. Here's the wild part. At the time, critics openly mocked the ranking because Belgium had only played in one major tournament in the previous 13 years. People genuinely questioned whether the system was broken. So who were these players making this small European country suddenly this dangerous? Belgium has a population of around 11 million people. Compare that to Brazil at over 200 million. Yet somehow, this tiny nation produced a cluster of world-class talent all at once. Kevin De Bruyne, widely considered one of the best midfielders of his generation. Eden Hazard, at his peak, one of the most electric wingers in world football. Romelu Lukaku, Belgium's all-time leading scorer. Thibaut Courtois, one of the best goalkeepers alive. Vincent Kompany, anchoring the defense. This wasn't one great player carrying a team. This was 5 or 6 players who could start for almost any elite club in the world, all wearing the same national jersey at the same time. Here's why that matters so much. In football, most countries are lucky to produce one truly world-class player per generation. Belgium produced an entire starting 11's worth in a country smaller than the state of Ohio. Journalists everywhere started calling it a golden generation, a term used when one country's youth system happens to produce an unusually stacked group of talent all at the same age, all at once. It doesn't happen often. When it does, expectations skyrocket instantly. So did they deliver? Sort of. Let's rewind to the 2018 World Cup in Russia, because this is where Belgium came closest to actually living up to the hype. They cruised through the group stage. Then in the round of 16, they were down 2-0 against Japan, looking like they were about to be embarrassingly eliminated. They came back and won 3-2. Then came the game people still talk about, the quarterfinal against Brazil, one of the most historically dominant football nations ever. Belgium won 2-1. Beating Brazil at a World Cup is like a college basketball underdog knocking out the defending champion in the tournament's final 8. It doesn't happen often, and when it does, it's a genuine shock. Belgium then lost to France in the semifinal 1-0 in a tight, tense match against the eventual champions. They bounced back to beat England in the third-place match, finishing 3rd overall. 3rd place out of every football nation on the planet. That remains Belgium's best World Cup finish in their entire history. And yet here's the twist that makes this story painful. 3rd place was their peak. It never got better than that. It only got worse. After 2018, Belgium didn't fade quietly. They actually climbed even higher. In October 2018, they reclaimed the number 1 ranking and held on to it for nearly 4 straight years, one of the longest streaks ever recorded, behind only Brazil and Spain. Think about that. A country with no World Cup title, no European championship, ranked the best team on earth for 4 continuous years. To this day, Belgium remains the only national team in history to reach number 1 without ever winning a World Cup or a major continental trophy. Being the best on paper and being the best on the trophy shelf turned out to be 2 completely different things. So what actually went wrong? A few things. First, timing. This generation's absolute physical peak lined up almost perfectly with 2018, and tournaments only come around every 2 to 4 years. By the time Euro 2020 arrived, delayed a year because of the pandemic, several key players were already past their sharpest form. Belgium lost in the quarterfinals to Italy, the eventual champions, a tight and forgettable exit for a team many expected to finally break through. Second, and this is something even Belgium's own players eventually admitted publicly, Kevin De Bruyne himself later said their real chance had already passed, calling the squad's aging core exactly that, aging. Eden Hazard said something almost identical, admitting the team had a better shot years earlier than in their most recent tournaments. When your own star players are telling the media the window already closed, that tells you everything about how fragile a golden generation's timeline actually is. Third, coaching and tactics. Under manager Roberto Martinez, who led the team for 6 years, Belgium's football was often praised for being enjoyable to watch, full of individual flair, but critics consistently pointed out something missing. A clear tactical plan for the biggest moments, the kind of disciplined game plan that turns raw talent into trophies. Individually brilliant players don't automatically add up to a dominant team. Sometimes the sum ends up smaller than the parts, and that's exactly the criticism that followed Belgium through their biggest tournaments. Then came 2022, the ending nobody wanted. Instead of one last run for the aging golden generation, Belgium crashed out in the group stage. Just the group stage. No knockout rounds. No dramatic exit. Just an early flight home. One brutal stat sums up how badly things went. Belgium's shot conversion rate at that tournament was 2.9%, the worst of any team that actually managed to score a goal. Chance after chance, wasted. Roberto Martinez resigned within hours of the elimination. So here's the lesson buried inside this entire story. Talent alone doesn't win championships. Belgium had, on paper, one of the most gifted rosters world football has seen in the last 2 decades. They reached number 1 in the world. They stayed there longer than almost any team in history. And they still finished their era with an empty trophy case. Sometimes the difference between being remembered as legends and being remembered as an almost isn't ability. It's timing, tactics, and how a group of individual stars actually comes together as one team. Quick recap. Belgium built a stacked, one-of-a-kind generation of world-class talent from a tiny population. They reached number 1 in the world twice, holding it for nearly 4 years the second time. Their best tournament result was 3rd place at the 2018 World Cup, and despite all of it, they became the only team in history to top the world rankings without ever winning a major trophy. Here's the final thought worth keeping. Being the most talented team on paper and being a championship team are not the same thing. Belgium proved that a golden generation can shine individually for years and still walk away from the biggest stage with nothing but memories of what almost happened. If this kind of breakdown makes football click for you, subscribe, because this channel takes the biggest stories in the sport and explains them for people who never thought they'd understand the game.